Hello, this is Jedd and today we're going to be talking about prejudice, a toxic mindset that every human might have in this world. But first, let us ask, what is prejudice? Prejudice is like judging a book by its cover without knowing the contents of inside that book. There are types of prejudice that happen all around the world, and there are exactly 9 of them. We have racism, ableism, sexism, classism, ageism, homophobia, nationalism, religious prejudice, and xenophobia. Let's discuss each one of them. First is racism. It is a discrimination directed against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalized. In the basics, this is technically favoring one race and disregarding another race. Racism will also take in effect when you attach a stereotype to an ethnic group. Next, we have ableism. It is a discrimination and social prejudice against people with disabilities or people who are perceived to be disabled. Ableism characterizes people as defined by their disabilities and inferior to the non-disabled. Ableism takes effect when assumptions are made that disabled people require fixing and defines people by their disability. Like racism and sexism, ableism classifies entire groups of people as less than and includes harmful stereotypes, misconceptions, and generalizations of people with disabilities. Next, we have sexism. Sexism is another type of prejudice, stereotyping, or discrimination typically against women or on the basis of sex. It is a discrimination based on one's sex or gender. Sexism can affect anyone, but it primarily affects women and girls. It has been linked to stereotypes and gender roles and may include the belief that one's sex or gender is intrinsically superior to another. Next up, we have classism. It is a type of prejudice against or in favor of people belonging to a particular social class. This is also known as class discrimination. A discrimination on the basis of social class. It includes individual attitudes, behaviors, systems of policies, and practices that are set up to benefit the upper class at the expense of the lower class. It is a differential treatment based on social class or perceived social class. Classism is the systematic oppression of subordinated class groups to advantage and strengthen the dominant class groups. It's the systematic assignment of characteristics of worth and ability based on social class. Next prejudice we have is ageism. It is a type of prejudice or discrimination on the grounds of a person's age. Unlike sexism or racism, this can happen to anyone. It typically affects older people, but it can also include teenagers. For older people, ageism at work is rooted in persistent myths, misperceptions, and outdated assumptions about older workers. For example, older workers are sometimes assumed to be too difficult to train and unable to keep up with the day-to-day demands of a job. People with ageist beliefs also frequently disregard the value of older workers' accumulated knowledge and depth of experience. Next up, we have homophobia. This is a type of prejudice against gay people. It encompasses a range of negative attitudes and feelings toward homosexuality or people who are identified or perceived as being lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. People who identify as any LGBTQ member may experience harassment or discrimination from people who are scared of or uncomfortable with these identities. Usually happens in today's generation. Next up, we have nationalism. Nationalism is another type of prejudice that usually involves a push for conformity, obedience, and solidarity amongst the nation's people and can result not only in feelings of public responsibility but also in narrow sense of community due to the exclusion of those who are considered outsiders. It is an ideology that emphasizes loyalty, devotion, or allegiance to a nation or nation-state that holds as such obligations outweigh other individual or group interests. The next type of prejudice we have is the religious prejudice. This type of prejudice is an intolerance of another's religious beliefs or practices or lack thereof. share statements which are contrary to one's belief do not constitute intolerance. Religious prejudice means negative attitudes or behavior between people of different religious groups because of their different religious beliefs. Different religions have different beliefs, practices, and leadership structure. In many regions of the world, religion is the defining characteristic of a people. Examples include refusing you a bank loan because you're Jewish, refusing to allow you to a restaurant because you're Muslim, or dismissing you from work because you're Rastafarian. Now for the last type of prejudice we have is xenophobia. This type of prejudice is almost similar to racism due to its antagonism against people from other countries. This type of prejudice is typically the fear of strangers, foreigners, or immigrants, and it is a broad term that may be applied to any fear of someone who is different from us. Hostility towards outsiders is often reaction to fear. It typically involves the belief that there is a conflict between an individual's group and an outgroup. Examples of xenophobia in the United States include acts of discrimination and violence against Latin, Mexican, and Middle Eastern immigrants. Certainly, not everyone who is xenophobic starts wars or commits hate crimes, but even felt xenophobia can have insidious effects on both individuals and society. And that's all, folks. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something.